This is the second video in a two-part sequence related to k-means clustering in MATLAB. In the last video, we cleaned and explored some data related to baseball sabermetrics. In this video, we'll use MATLAB to perform k-means clustering. First, we need to combine the wins and the home run columns from the data table into one matrix. We will be performing k-means clustering, so let's make a variable representing the maximum number of clusters we want to form. We will compute the effectiveness of our clusters using both a silhouette plot and the elbow method. For the elbow method, we need to compute the within cluster sum of squares, so let's create a vector which stores these values. I'm going to add two statements just for housekeeping purposes. These statements close all the figures and set the random number generator used by the k-means algorithm. This ensures that the results I obtain in this video are reproducible to you. Now, let's write a loop that performs k-means clustering with an increasing number of clusters in each iteration. In each iteration of the for loop, we perform k-means clustering by calling the k-means function. The outputs of this function are the cluster indices, centroid locations of each cluster, and the within cluster sums of point to centroid distances. We then compute the within cluster sum of squares, which is an easy operation since we have the sumd variable. Finally, we call the plot clusters function, which is a custom subfunction I wrote to visualize the clusters. The plot clusters subfunction accepts the data matrix and other variables related to the clustering results. It outputs a figure handle in case you want to manipulate the figure further. As we'll see in a second, this function makes a figure with two subplots. The upper subplot contains all the data which is color-coded based on the assigned cluster. This subplot also plots the centroids of each cluster. On the bottom subplot, the silhouette function is called to create a silhouette plot of each clustering result. Upon running the code, there should be 8 figure windows that are probably stacked on top of each other. You can see what cluster each data point is assigned to. The location of each centroid is denoted by the x's. Before we look at the bottom subplot, let's inspect the outputs of the k-means function. We know that x, our data matrix, has 30 rows because we have 30 data points, one for each MLB team. The IDX variable contains the cluster number of each data point, so IDX also has 30 rows. When the data are split into 8 clusters, the first 3 data points belong to cluster 2, the next 3 data points belong to cluster 4, and so forth. To find the coordinates of the 8 centroids, we can open the CTRDS variable. CTRDS is a matrix with 8 rows, one for each cluster, and 2 columns representing the x and the y coordinates of each cluster's centroid. These are shown on each figure as the black x's. Finally, we can also inspect the sumd variable. This variable also has k rows but only one column. The numbers here represent the square of the distance from each point in a cluster to that cluster's centroid. In this case, the last element is 0 because the 8th cluster only contains one point, so that point is the centroid. Now that we have a better understanding of the k-means function's outputs and how we can plot them, let's look at the bottom subplot of each figure. This subplot displays the silhouette plot with a vertical red line at 0.6 to indicate our silhouette score, otherwise known as the separation threshold. When we partition the data into 8 clusters, only a few data points in each cluster are above this threshold. This means that the majority of points in each cluster lie very close to another cluster, which likely indicates that there are too many clusters. Some data points even have a negative silhouette score, so these points may have been assigned to the wrong cluster. When we partition the data into 4 clusters, most of the points in each cluster exceed the silhouette score. This indicates that 4 clusters might suit our data set. If we only have one cluster, the silhouette plot is blank. This is because the silhouette score measures how close data points are to other clusters, so when we only have one cluster, no silhouette score can be computed. The silhouette score is one way to evaluate our clustering results. We can also use the elbow method, which is based on the within cluster sum of squares. We can see the bend in the elbow occurs around 3 clusters, which is reasonably in line with the silhouette plots. Furthermore, having around 3 or 4 clusters aligns with the general distribution of the data as well. It's important to note that in many data science problems, justifying things like the number of clusters is equally as important as performing the clustering itself. Just like any other data science or programming problem, there are many other ways to cluster data and to evaluate clusters in MATLAB. I encourage you to explore this example on your own time. Tweak a few variables or settings here and there and see how the clusters change. Furthermore, I encourage you to read the MATLAB documentation to learn about some of the other clustering related functions not covered in this video. Thanks and see you next time.